Chapter 1671, Showing Strength to the World. Qingdao, a small island in Southeast Asia, was once a very prosperous country. But after the end of the world, due to the shortage of energy and the small population, it soon disappeared from this world. Of course, there were some survivors on the island, but they were completely extinct because of the large amount of poisonous fog that emerged from the fog valley. Now, this area has completely become the territory of the Wulwan Empire. The area around Qingdao is thousands of miles wide, and it is full of thick poisonous fog. Even the fish in the offshore dare not approach. Looking down from the sky, along Qingdao, all the way down, through the thick soil and rock formations, tens of thousands of meters deep underground, there is a vast and huge space with an unknown depth. This is the Wulwan Empire, a country ruled by lizard men. The highest peak of the Wulwan Empire is a cliff shaped like a crescent moon. The Grand Marshal of the Wulwan Empire, gatekeeper of the underworld, is sitting on the edge of the cliff. He always likes to sit here and watch over the territory of his tribe. Behind him, four generals in silver armor and amazing momentum are waiting respectfully. Marshal, scouts Yuying and Miatong also died in the battle. A silver-armored general said in a deep voice. The gatekeeper of the Hades slowly raised his head. After hearing the news, there was no expression on his face, but there was a hint of anger in his deep eyes. To fight against a country with only 6 generations, 3 scouts, a silver-armored general, and the entire special forces were killed. Is it because the enemy is too powerful, or have you been too comfortable these years and forgotten the lessons of your ancestors? The voice of the gatekeeper of the Hades was low, as if it came from a jar, but these words, which were light and calm, made the 4 silver-armored men feel depressed. The 4 silver-armored men immediately knelt on one knee and buried their heads deeply. It's my incompetence. The gatekeeper of the Hades did not look back at them. His eyes still stayed on his feet, on this vast land. The Wulwan Empire, like the Nash kingdom that Zhang Yi had visited before, is vertical and 3-dimensional. At a glance, the kingdom is bottomless, and no one knows how deep it is. Above the sky, there is a brilliant and magnificent blue-purple color. Just one look will make people deeply intoxicated. I don't know how many years it has been since the Hades gatekeeper was just a child. He always liked to look up at this piece of sky. They call it the sky. But the history teacher once told them that the sky is false, and the real sky is above the sky. There is the place where the Wulwan Empire people should go. The Hades gatekeeper was silent for a long time before slowly saying, "This can't be blamed entirely on you. The time is not yet fully ripe. You are not adapted to the environment above the dome and cannot fight for a long time." A silver armor looked at his colleagues on the left and right and said, "Although we did not achieve the expected results in the first battle, we have already figured out the details of the opponent. Please give us another chance. In this battle, we will definitely be able to completely take down that human country." The Hades gatekeeper raised his head and looked up at the sky, as if he wanted to see through the thick rock layer. Everything on the surface. He was very curious about what it was like to be able to walk under the sun. But he had only seen the sun 2 years ago. It was a burning sensation that made his body feel uncomfortable, but he instinctively wanted to follow it. Time cannot be delayed any further. The day of the world's destruction will also give the surface races the fastest time to evolve. We can't wait any longer. And there are more races coveting the world above the land than just us. After saying this, the gatekeeper of the underworld stood up from the edge of the cliff. They were obviously of the same race, but when he stood up, his body was obviously much more muscular than the 4 silver armors, nearly 2 heads taller. Hidden under the black armor was a perfect and strong body. Any movement could make people feel the explosive power of the body. He turned around and faced the 4 silver armors. "I will fight this battle myself." The 4 silver armors were shocked when they heard this. Are you going to do it yourself? It's just a small human country. How can you go to the land? And, with your strength, you will easily be punished by the one god. The gatekeeper of the underworld looked down at them and said slowly, "This world has quietly changed. The sixth generation is no longer favored by the gods, but has become a race abandoned by the gods. Everything is an inevitable outcome. There will be no changes. Their demise is inevitable. The four silver armors did not dare to have any objections, but they knew it very well in their hearts. Once the invincible marshal in front of them personally took action, there would be no suspense in conquering any country on the land, because his strength has exceeded the scope of what creatures can understand. They have seen the aliens of Huashu country, and through the intelligence sent back by the dead soldiers before their death, they also learned about the most advanced weapons and the most powerful aliens of Huashu country. But so what? What is the chaos of Tianhai City? What is the strongest in Shengjing district background? Ho2. In front of their great marshal, they are all weak and insignificant. The gatekeeper of the underworld slowly walked towards the four silver armors with awe. Prepare a battle plan. The Wulwan Empire has landed on land, and we must show our strength to the world with the most gorgeous achievements. His eyes flashed with an extremely domineering light. One of the most fertile lands in the land world. We will take it first. Let those tribes who are afraid of the power of heaven and dare not get out of the soil have a good look. The four silver armors immediately said, "Yes, Marshal." The gatekeeper of the underworld soared into the sky, followed by the four silver armors, and they flew away. Looking from the sky, you can see that in the Wulwan Empire, there are strange-shaped high-rise buildings everywhere. It is not the kind of primitive architecture imagined. Whether it is the level of technology or the level of aesthetics, it is far beyond the human beings on land. Even in the air, there are many small aircraft flying on fixed orbits. They came to a spire-shaped building at the highest point of the Wulwan Empire and immediately held a meeting for the second round of landing war. The conference room was a huge circular space. Perhaps on this planet, the ethnic groups that grew up in similar environments had similar needs, so their architectural styles were generally similar. In the center of the conference room was a huge round table, and the walls were completely transparent, allowing a clear view of the entire city. Outside, soldiers in green armor stood guard holding white weapons, and in the distant sky, large and small aircraft flew by from time to time. Chapter 1670. Tomorrow night. The gatekeeper of Hades stood at the front of the conference room. On both sides of the round table, four silver-armored generals and an adjutant in white uniforms were neatly arranged. On the round table, the projection of Huashu country was clearly projected, as well as some forces in the surrounding seas, all of which were clearly marked. Among the silver-armored generals, the one named Blood Tide by Huashu country stretched out his right hand and introduced to the gatekeeper of Hades. After the last round of war, we already know how strong this country called Huashu is. Their technological level has reached a relatively high level, and they can master a weapon with extremely powerful power to attack us from the sky or on land. This will pose a certain degree of threat to us, but as long as the battlefield is controlled in their core area and we deal with it carefully, it will be difficult for them to cause effective attacks on us. The gatekeeper of Hades asked, "How powerful is it?" Blood Tide replied, "It will cause some damage to the four of us." The gatekeeper of Hades was no longer interested. No problem. He looked at the map, his eyes wandering around in various areas, like a beast searching for prey. "I want to know where the man who killed the scout Xing Yi and massacred the entire Special Operations Forces?" As soon as these words came out, the four silver armors at the scene were embarrassed. Their battle should have ended in a very gorgeous victory. After all, in the other four battlefields, they destroyed the target area to a terrifying degree and killed countless human warriors. But only in Tianhai City did their brother troops suffer a great loss, and they were completely wiped out. For the Wulwan Empire, this is an unspeakable shame. Huh. The gatekeeper of the underworld looked at them coldly. It was his adjutant who spoke. "It's here, sir." A small city on the seashore. He stretched out his hand and pointed to the location of Tianhai City, and the three-dimensional map immediately enlarged that area. The gatekeeper of the underworld narrowed his eyes and stared at that place. "You mean to say that our reorganized Special Operations Force didn't even take down a city of the other side, and was completely wiped out?" The faces of several silver armors became even uglier, and the adjutant could only say helplessly, "Yes, Marshal." The gatekeeper of the underworld nodded, and then pointed directly at Tianhai City. "Then the next battle will start from here." He personally took action and must win this victory in the most gorgeous way. There is no suspense, crushing one of the most powerful countries of mankind. Only in this way can they cover up the humiliation of their last battle and demonstrate the strength of the Wulwan Empire. The four silver armors did not express any opinions. In their opinion, as long as the gatekeeper of the underworld took action, then all human forces would be completely destroyed wherever his sword pointed. Then, how should we execute the battle plan? Xueqiao asked. At present, the only two cities in Huaxu country that are really strong enough to make us waste some time are Xinjing and Tianhai. Other areas can be completely destroyed with another round of assaults. The Hades gatekeeper stared at Tianhai City and Xinjing City and said casually, "No need to be so troublesome. After the first round of war, they have already become defensive against us. If you continue to divide your troops at this time, you may also follow the footsteps of the Fifth Army. Just follow me to this seaside town." The Hades gatekeeper clenched his fists, as if he wanted to hold Tianhai City tightly in his palm and crush it. Smash Tianhai City first, and then attack Xinjing directly. Use all your strength to break their sharpest swords. Then this country can be easily taken. At this point, a dark and deep light flashed in his eyes. He vaguely remembered what happened 2 years ago. That was the first time he was alarmed and set out to the surface. For countless years, the Wulwan Empire had its first contact with the outside world, and it was he, the Grand Marshal of the Empire, who was dispatched. He was also terrified in his heart, and had enough awe for the unknown world above the sky, fearing that he would encounter a powerful and terrible race. After landing, even though he was wearing armor, he felt the scorching heat of the sun. And he felt the weakness of humans. They were as weak as insects, and the gatekeepers of the underworld could easily crush them. If it weren't for the huge power in the dark that was alerting him, or perhaps out of a sense of playfulness towards insects, he could easily wipe out everyone on the spot. Among the group of people, there was a human youth who left a very deep impression on him. With just a quick glance, he remembered the boy who had extremely rare spatial abilities and was extremely vigilant. He used the sacred residues eliminated by the Wulwan Empire and accidentally broke through the life level and reached the 5th level. And the breath belonging to the Wulwan Empire also made the gatekeepers of the underworld curious about the young man. I just didn't expect that in just 2 years his progress would be so amazing. If we continue to let him and his race grow, perhaps in a few years, the landing plan of the Wulwan Empire will be greatly hindered. The underground world is not as peaceful as imagined. The gatekeeper of the underworld put his hands on the table. His eyes penetrated the transparent wall of the conference room and looked at the outside world. Over the endless years, they have experienced many disasters that almost destroyed the country. The tribes that survived in the world can only pray for divine mercy every day and then look for opportunities in the cracks. They also want to live upright and become a tribe blessed by the gods. Therefore, this opportunity, which they have been waiting for so hard, must be seized. Be prepared for the second expedition. The time for the expedition is tomorrow night. The gatekeeper of the underworld folded his hands on his chest and issued a combat order in a domineering tone. With the strength of the Wulwan Empire, such war preparations will not take too long to complete. Now it is the world of the capable. A force of hundreds of elite warriors is enough to destroy a huge human kingdom. For the future of the Wulwan Empire, said the gatekeeper of the underworld. The adjutants and 4 silver-armored men beside him bowed their heads, crossed their hands in front of their chests, and said devoutly and firmly, for the future of the Wulwan Empire. A more brutal war is about to begin. Chapter 1673 Transfer All. It was a dark night with no wind. Zhang Yi should have gone to bed early, but for some reason, he had not fallen asleep. Standing in the bedroom, looking at the black night sky outside the window, He always felt that something would happen tonight. Recently, he never took off his clothes when he went to bed at night. He was ready to fight every night. Fortunately, he had already gotten used to this kind of life. After all, he had experienced so many things since the end of the world, which was still very challenging. With his lead, the others in the shelter followed suit and did not dare to neglect it. Above the fog valley of Qingdao, countless satellites around the world were staring at this place. From the distant universe, the most precise monitoring was carried out here. Since it was known that the enemy would appear from here, it would be easier to conduct reconnaissance. The power of modern technology is not completely for show. At midnight, when it was darkest, they thought that the army of the Wulwan Empire was most likely to appear. In the satellite monitoring station of Huaxi State, the alarm suddenly sounded, and all the staff stared at the big screen in front of them. Suddenly, a strong storm appeared from the thick fog, breaking through everything. Even though they knew that humans were on guard against them, the people of the Wulwan Empire did not bother to appear in any way to cover up this time. They were showing off their military power, because this time, it was the Grand Marshal of their Wulwan Empire who went to war in person. And this scene, I don't know how many forces caught the news at the same time. Far across the ocean, in the Ville district of Franklin, Colombia, the projections of politicians representing various states gathered together immediately. Have they appeared? The monsters under the ground. This is the first confrontation between humans and underground civilized creatures. What will the result be? It's really worrying. Their expressions were more solemn than one another. Although they had a relationship with Huaxu Kingdom as a competitor before, at this time, when facing threats other than humans, no one wanted Huaxu Kingdom to lose in this battle. Because that also means that the entire human civilization will face a huge crisis. Far away in Europe, the headquarters of the Junjing Church, Beidgang. Late at night, Pope Alexander X had already lain down and received the news in his sleep. A meaningful look appeared on his old face, and the corners of his mouth, which looked like goose skin, slowly curled up. Then he put his hands together and muttered in an unclear tone, "This is the way for all living beings to atone for their sins. The gods will eventually have mercy on mankind in the form of destruction, and only those who believe in the Lord devoutly can enter heaven." And next to Huaxu, the high-ranking officials of the Barada Alliance received this news, but they were all excited and smiled. Great! This time Huaxu will face a devastating blow. From now on, no matter how their war situation is, we will only have one superpower in Asia. When their people die in battle, that land will also be included in the territory of my Barada Alliance. A group of Barada high-ranking officials celebrated. But among the crowd, there was one person with a frown. Not everyone was blinded by short-term interests. The high-caste official of Barada in front of him realized that once Huaxu was hit by the underground civilization, then Barada, which is geographically adjacent to Huaxi State, is very likely to suffer the same blow in the near future. He understood the principle of the lips and the teeth are cold. But looking at the officials celebrating around him, he finally shut up. Most people are only immersed in the fact that their imaginary enemies are about to be defeated, but no one thinks about what the real threat is to them. Huaxi State. All major regions sounded the alarm at the first time. Zhang Yi's eyes became sharp in an instant, and he clenched his fists behind his back. I just don't know where they will choose to attack. Will it be Tianhai City? But the next moment, he turned around resolutely, and Zhou Ke was behind him and entered the living room with him. Everyone was there at the first time. Zhang Yi didn't say any nonsense, but just said according to the scene that had been rehearsed countless times. Action. Mu Yan directly opened her shadow space, and then put everyone except Zhang Yi, Hua, and Liang Yu into the alien space. Then she came to the outside world, and took in everyone in the spherical fortress. These people were the elites Zhang Yi had selected from various shelters in advance. They included regular members of the Fueying Force and its reserve forces, as well as some scientists, engineers, chemists, agronomists, and other elite talents. Together, there were about 1,000 people. As for the others, Zhang Yi had no time to take care of them, so he could only let them hide in a shelter 1 or 200 meters underground. There, even if the death of love shot them, they could save their lives. However, if a war really broke out with Tianhai City as the center, the battles between the many Ypsilons might still kill them. There was not much Zhang Yi could do. He could only try to save some people and leave a fire. After doing all this, he took several people soared into the air. Under their feet was the huge Tianhai fortress. Zhang Yi used the smart device to give it an order. Transfer mode, start. The next moment, the ground under his feet rumbled and trembled. The huge base, starting from the base, slowly floated up. It turned out that before Zhang Yi built this base, when it was still a shelter, he had considered moving the entire shelter. At that time, he thought about it for a long time and even thought about the future melting of glaciers and the flooding of Tianhai City. So from the beginning, the shelter he wanted was movable. The later Tianhai fortress also inherited this point, and it was not fixed underground. After the mechanism was activated, the entire Tianhai fortress was lifted up. Zhang Yi activated the ability of the different space, and the 10,000 things unfolded, turning into an extremely huge dimensional gate, slowly absorbing the entire Tianhai fortress. That's right, before this battle even started, Zhang Yi was ready to escape. As for weapons such as the Tianhai cannon and the city defense sniper, they are no longer necessary to use them with the satellite positioning sniper space-based weapons of Xinjiang District and Donghai District. The huge Tianhai fortress slowly sank into the alien space. Zhang Yi hid it in the deepest part of the 3,000 dimensional gates to prevent it from being damaged in the subsequent battles. Then, he said something in the wartime group chat channel of Huashu country. Chaos, Zuanv, Cheongqi, ready for battle. Chapter 1674. The army approaches. In the fog valley of Qingdao, the gatekeeper of Hades led the team and appeared directly in the dark night. As soon as they appeared, they immediately went straight to Huashu State. Target, Tianhai City. In Xinjiang District, in the newly built Earth God Temple, Guan Longyue was dressed in black and sat on a chair with a calm expression. Because no one knew at this time which area the Wulwan Empire was targeting, or was it the same as last time, attacking the entire Huashu State. Next to her stood Shang Daowen and Zhongyu. In the Earth God Temple, the 36 Tiangang plus several captain-level aliens of the Dragon Mingard were all here, including Li Yongyang. Tianjiexing Daixing was ready to activate his ability at any time to transfer all the combat power of Huashu State in real time. In order to deal with this large-scale war, people must be sent to stop the invaders as soon as possible. Otherwise, even if it is only delayed for a moment, it will bring a huge disaster to an area. Keep following the enemy's position. They move too fast, and space-based weapons can't lock on at all. If you want to attack them from a long distance, you have to have someone to hold them back and prevent them from moving at high speed. The enemy is still moving, and the direction they're pointing to is not northwest, so they're most likely heading towards the East China Sea and Jiangnan regions. Is there any possibility of passing them and attacking other regions?
No.
According to the offensive characteristics of the Wulwan Empire, they will not let go of any obstacles along the way. Intelligence was being exchanged frantically, and no one from the major forces on the entire planet could sleep tonight. Thunder God Purin, Alexei Ivanov sat quietly under the eaves, facing the wind and snow, quietly wiping his pair of chopping axes. There was no expression on his face, not even the excitement or fear of the upcoming battle. This man looked extremely dull, but he was a very trustworthy man. In Tianhai City, Newton was wearing a dark blue armor, holding his huge hand cannon, Atheist, that looked like a living thing in his right hand, followed by hundreds of Sea Wolf commandos, waiting for the enemy to attack with grim faces. Their target is Tianhai. Newton looked at the night sky in the distance. The cold wind blew over his body, lifting his neatly combed hair. At the same time, it was not just one person who realized this. Perhaps everyone understood that the other party's main target of attack could only be Tianhai City or Xinjiang. Judging from the other party's path, Xinjiang is obviously unlikely, so there is only Tianhai City. I did provoke too much hatred, making them eager to kill me. But I can survive in the difficult apocalypse until now. How can I be killed so easily by you? Zhang Yi's mouth curled up a cold smile. Are you afraid? Afraid. The body was shaking slightly because of fear, but it was not entirely because of fear, but also because of excitement. An unprecedented battle is about to come, and adrenaline begins to be secreted in large quantities. It is a natural stimulant in the human body, which can make people burst out energy that they do not have under normal circumstances. It is normal for people to fear death. But only by fighting can you win a chance to survive. The large army of the Wulwan Empire swept across the ocean like a gust of wind, heading straight for Tianhai City. At this time, the opponent's target was undisputed. Countless eyes from all over the world were staring at this place. Even in the distant neon, two illusory figures emerged, watching the movements there from afar. Finally, someone can't bear it anymore and wants to take action? Who are they? Are they old acquaintances? I don't know, a very strange smell. Are they among those who attacked us at the beginning? Who knows? It's too long ago. We have long forgotten it. The history books of the years are almost wiped out. Very good, then let these courageous guys try God's will. Under the night sky, a huge black armor swept across, and the entire sea surface was stirred up by huge winds and waves, and the angry waves rushed into the sky. Even the creatures in the endless ocean chose to remain silent because they felt its powerful pressure. Shengjing. Tianjiexing Daixing was ready. Shang Dawen waved his hand with cold eyes. Teleport. Start. Daixing took out two armor horses from his combat uniform, wrapped them around his waist, then put his hands on his temples and slowly closed his eyes. When he closed his eyes, bright stars appeared in his mind. That was the direction of the space coordinates he left at the beginning. Silver light appeared on his body, gradually covering everyone present. In the distant Tianhai City, Zhang Yi had gathered everyone and sat quietly on the landmark building of Tianhai City, Tianhai TV Tower, waiting for the arrival of friendly forces and enemies. The first to arrive were Newton and his subordinates. Shua, shua, shua. One after another, figures appeared out of thin air, and all the 36 Tian gang were present. After they landed, they immediately scattered in all directions like birds and beasts. Then the aliens from various regions also arrived in this area in an instant. They each found their own partner and looked at the dark sea in the distance with sharp eyes. The night wind was howling crazily, and a terrifying murderous intent was coming from far away. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes and waited quietly for something. Suddenly, a bright light lit up in the distant sky, and then fell into the ocean like a meteor. In an instant, it was as if 100,000 suns appeared on the sea at the same time, with a terrifying glow and an extremely hot temperature sweeping in all directions. Zhang Yi and others had made preparations in advance, so they used the tactical helmets of their combat uniforms to isolate this dazzling light. In a very distant area, a huge mushroom cloud slowly rose into the sky, reaching a height of 10,000 meters. The most powerful weapon of mankind, the god of death of love, and the god of death of love with the highest equivalent level in the current inventory of Huaxi country, was launched from Blizzard City in Jiangnan district and headed straight for the 500 nautical mile area near the coast of Tianhai City. The speed of the Wulwan Empire's alien troops was indeed fast enough, and it was also difficult to capture their precise position through remote means. However, it is easier to predict the path from the sea to Tianhai City. This love-death was their welcome gift to these underground races. I hope it will work. This is the first time we use love-death against them. As long as we don't fight on our homeland, they will understand how powerful human civilization and technology are, Han Shanzhua said coldly, but his eyes were full of expectations. If we can gain an advantage without fighting, it would be great. But not long after, the news came. The troops of the Wulwan Empire, without any casualties, are approaching Tianhai City. Chapter 1675 The Arrival of Black Armor. Although it was expected that the Wulwan Empire would come with such a strong force this time, it would not be so easy to deal with. But it was unexpected that the most powerful weapon in the human world would not have any effect on them. Everyone's heart could not help but sink. How strong are they? Han Shanzhua couldn't help but whispered. Li Changgong heard his somewhat discouraged words in the communication channel and immediately scolded. What's so strange? With the level of civilization of the Wulwan Empire, they must have mastered weapons that are no less than the god of death of love. It is completely reasonable to be able to block such an attack. Zhang Yi's heart moved when he heard this, and he couldn't help asking, then, do you think they also have that kind of extraordinary killing weapon in their hands?
No.
If they have it, they would have used it a long time ago, Shang Dawen said firmly. He pushed his glasses, or even if they have it, they didn't use it for some unknown purpose. The technology tree itself is a very wonderful thing. If it is based on the technological level and weapon level of this world when the god of death of love was born, it is hard to imagine that humans can create such a lethal weapon. And above the ocean, half a minute ago, when the troops of the Wulwan Empire saw the meteor falling from the sky into the sea, they immediately fell into a state of alert. They had been lurking in the human kingdom for a long time and naturally heard about the terrifying weapon, so it was impossible for them to be unprepared. Seeing this, the gatekeeper of the underworld reached out and took out a silver metal ball from his armor. It looked like a toy, which could be held in one hand, and there were some hollow holes on it. Even he showed enough caution when facing this special silver metal ball. Not to mention the silver armor behind him, the black and white commanders and the blue armor warriors, who subconsciously wanted to retreat. The gatekeeper of the underworld twisted the silver metal ball and threw it into the air. At the moment when the huge god of death of love descended, the silver metal ball also burst out with terrifying power. And that was an energy more magnificent than the god of death of love, forming a gorgeous sky curtain, completely isolating the power of the explosion from this world. The terrifying explosion, even at a great distance, also made all the aliens in the Fog Valley feel a huge pressure. This generation of humans does have extremely terrifying destructive power. This is in sharp contrast to their own weakness. The gatekeeper of the underworld listened to the words of the blood tide and whispered, "Is this generation a wise race? Could it be the Ihan tribe that the one god loves the most?" At this point, he shook his head again. It can't be like this. They are too weak and full of flaws. It can only be a failed work. The giant blade saw the power that burst out of the silver sphere, and its control over power far exceeded that of the god of death of love. It was the masterpiece of the Wulwan Empire. Marshal, why don't you just use ancient weapons to wipe out that country directly? The giant blade couldn't help asking. The gatekeeper of the underworld glanced at him coldly, his eyes full of warnings, and scared the giant blade to bow his head and confess his guilt. That power is the source of the chaos. That's why our ancestors sealed it up. We have already taken a big risk by appearing in this world. If we go too far, we will be wiped out. The Hades gatekeeper looked at the distant sea level and snorted coldly. To deal with them, there is no need to use the forbidden power. Follow me and wipe them all out. As soon as the voice fell, the armor on his body burst out with a powerful driving force, and the Hades gatekeeper turned into a terrifying storm and headed straight for Tianhai City. In Tianhai City, all the combat readiness troops are ready to go. The most elite warriors in each region, at least 9,000 plus deputy captain level aliens, are qualified to participate in the war. Even the Seawolf Commando of Columbia handed over the wartime command authority to the mobile force member, Chiyu Xiaolai. He was promoted to Ypsilon 2 recently, so he was responsible for leading the team to resist most of the blue-armored warriors. Xiaolai was not idle. He activated his ability of Metal Frenzy and directly strengthened the weapons of all the Ypsilon-level aliens present. With his ability, the weapons in Zhang Yi and others' hands can be increased by at least 20% in power. That's all I can do for you on the front battlefield, Xiaolai said to everyone, and immediately took the members of the Special Operations team away from the front battlefield. He was not strong enough to participate in the battle of the Ypsilon level. After strengthening the weapons, his mission was over.
Boom.
There were bursts of thunder in the direction of the sea, but there was no lightning in the sky. This roaring sound was a strong wind and a tsunami. In the ocean, Cartiers and Xuanwu had already led a large number of sea beast troops floating in the sea, waiting for a hearty battle with the enemy's marine troops. In the distant sky, a huge black line quickly attacked Tianhai City. Zhang Yi used the smart device of the combat uniform to see clearly what it was. Tsunami. A super-large tsunami as high as more than 200 meters is rushing towards this direction with the attitude of destroying the entire Tianhai City. Judging from its scale, I am afraid that this time not only Tianhai City will be swallowed up, but also several surrounding cities will not be spared. Zhang Yi took a deep breath. At this time, he had no time to feel sad for the people who might die. They must do everything they can to defeat the invading enemy. They are coming. Let's start. According to the established battle plan, everyone was divided into small teams and moved to their respective positions with the assistance of Daisheng. In the ocean outside Tianhai City, on the huge black waves, the Hades gatekeeper stepped on the huge waves and descended on the city in an invincible posture. Boom! A dazzling beam of light shot out from Tianhai City and went straight to the Hades gatekeeper. Seeing this scene, the Hades gatekeeper did not dodge at all, but just casually raised his right hand and waved it gently as if to drive away mosquitoes. The Tianwei weapon cannon that was powerful enough to make the silver-armored alien change color was actually deflected by the gatekeeper of the underworld with one hand. Not to mention causing any damage to him, it didn't even break his armor. At the highest point of Tianhai City, Zhang Yi and Shang Daowen stood here. Zhang Yi held a huge hand cannon in his hand, which was already emitting green smoke. Although the disposable Tianhai cannon was made of sufficient materials, it could only do this much considering its portability. Zhang Yi directly put it into the alien space. Sure enough, it's harder to deal with than I imagined. He stared at the black-armored figure in the distance and said in a deep voice,